another cutting edge episode of AIBiz, where we explore the intersection of innovation, health, mindset, and the modern living. So, today's conversation takes us into one of the most urgent and rapidly evolving arenas of our time, which is AI and cybersecurity. Yeah. So, as AI becomes more powerful, it's transforming like how we defend against cyber threats. But it's also creating the new vulnerabilities we are barely prepared for. Yeah. And to help us break it all down, I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, Grant McCracken. So welcome to the show, Grant.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing.
Happy to be here.
Lovely. So, dear listeners, before we start delving deep into this topic today, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Grant. So, dear listeners, Grant is the founder of Dark Horse Security, ethical hacker, cybersecurity executive, and someone who has spent 13 plus years not just studying those problems, but actively building solutions. And he has seen the landscape like from the inside out, leading teams across penetration testing, hacker success, security ops, solution architecture, and more. And now, through Dark Horse Security, he's on a mission to make high quality cybersecurity accessible and affordable for the businesses of every size. Like, because in today's world, everything is a target. Yeah. So, dear listeners, if you have ever wondered like how AI is changing the game both for the attackers and the defenders, then this is the conversation that you definitely won't want to miss it. So, welcome to the show again, Grant.
Cool. Yeah, happy to be here. It's an exciting period in history, to be able to, we've got AI going on and for, just like with any novel technology, right? It also has some potential downsides. And so just, you got to make sure that you're implementing and using
Mm,
in a manner that's consistent with, uh, you know, not creating a bunch of vulnerabilities.
exactly, exactly. Like you mentioned it correctly. Like AI is transforming everything, every industry, but when it comes to the cybersecurity, it's both a kind of weapon and a shield. So, if you can give us kind of quick landscape view, like how AI is changing both the side of this equation right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, uh,
Mhm.
is there something specific you want to go into, right? In terms of how is it being used from an offensive security perspective or like a defensive or,
Yeah, you can
um,
say you can say this. You can say this way also. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities, with AI right now. I mean, some of the really interesting ones are, how you're going to potentially leverage AI to,
Mm,
um, you know, augment or improve existing scanning solutions, right? Because there's been, security's been huge on automation for a very long
mm,
period of time, and so you've always had something, hackers have always, been scanning the internet and looking for vulnerabilities,
yeah.
and conversely, you have, security teams that are scanning their assets to identify vulnerabilities as well, and so one really interesting area that I think that AI will be used for, at least in the future. I don't think it's quite there yet in terms of being able to identify some of those vulnerabilities that humans would have to have identified previously. Right? There's a couple different vulnerability classes that are sort of uniquely only able to be found by humans, whereas automation just runs into a litany of problems because it doesn't have contextual awareness. Right? And what are these LLMs pretty good at? They're pretty good at, having context and being able to
Yeah.
think, as it were, through some of these through some of these things. So I think there's some opportunities. Again, I haven't really seen anybody really get after it in terms of
Mm,
developing and delivering a solution, but it's certainly it's got plenty of impact in terms of, uh, some of the places that you see it right now are more quickly, I mean, so it makes it easier for attackers to write
Mhm.
scripts, but also for defenders to write scripts or to find mitigations, right?
Yeah.
So there's people are using it in those different ways. Um, but I think probably the biggest impact that AI is having on security right now is just kind of the attack surface that it's created. For
Mm,
instance, all the different vulnerability types that just didn't exist. A few years ago, for instance, prompt injection, right, wasn't
mm,
a thing. Um, and the other vulnerabilities related to LLMs and AI,
yeah.
actually just, kind of just stem from, very similar, vulnerabilities in pretty much anything. For instance, you've got like, improper input and output handling, right?
Mm,
You've had that again for a very long period of time. It's just in this new framework where again, people aren't necessarily building it securely because it's new and it's novel and stuff of that nature. And so you just kind of have to
mm,
find new ways to secure those inputs. Again, your supply chain comes into play. You've still got there's other novel things. For instance, you like poison LLMs, right? That's a really fun attack vector, and interesting, right? If you can because people rely on these things for information, and so if I go ask, even if it says don't, you know double check everything ChatGPT says because it may make mistakes.
mm,
I'm not going to go double check everything. I mean, some things, but like, I'm going to be like, can my dog eat a strawberry? Yes or no? And like, but it's possible that like it can be wrong with things, that are simple and more complex as well. And you can even, potentially poison some of
mm,
these LLMs by giving them bad information. And again, it doesn't know up from down, left from right. It just knows the information that's been provided. It can't necessarily do anything more than that.
mm. Wow, amazing. And one more thing is like, if I have to ask, like, are there any specific attack types, or you can say the vulnerabilities that AI has made more dangerous or uh, more common? Like anything?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has made the again, the attack surface, because again, the vulnerabilities that it exposes itself, for
Mm,
instance, like excessive data exposure. That's something that
yeah.
it's really kind of brought into the limelight, as it were, as you've got things like organizations will just go turn on, like a
Mm,
Microsoft organization just turns on Copilot for everybody, and then
yeah.
they didn't set up the permissions correctly, or it's just got some overly grubby sort of reach, and you're able to be like, just like random person's able to be like, oh, show me the financial planning model for next year or something, and like pulls all that information for it, and it's like, oh, here you go. And so
Yeah.
and that's a real world thing. That's a real thing that that happens. And so so it's just again, I think it's more of what, LLMs are creating. They do make, again, they make existing attacks a little more expedient, a little bit easier to do, right? You can just say, hey, write me an exploit for this, or scan this thing every night and look for these 5 things. And again, we're not quite to the point where it's identifying contextual vulnerabilities, which is where I think things will get a lot more interesting. Again, I could be wrong about that. I am
Mm,
wrong about a great many of things. So there's a non-zero chance that somebody's already got that and doing that. But
okay.
in the same way that AI hasn't necessarily changed the way we code, right? For instance, it's just, if you write, like, I don't know if you write code or anything to that effect, but like it doesn't,
Mhm,
it's not like AI is like, oh, like we could just code like 20
mhm,
oh, like there's like this brilliant new way of coding. It just
mhm.
takes the way you've always done things because that's what it's trained on. That's what it's
Yeah.
learned on, right? It learned on how everybody's done it on Stack Overflow and everything else. And it just helps
Mhm.
you be a little faster at it. Same thing
Mm,
applies as it relates to security, right? It's not necessarily, at least in terms of what I've seen so far, it hasn't necessarily just created new vulnerabilities or
mm,
for attackers. It just helps them more easily automate what they're doing or look for certain attacks that already existed. And um so yeah, I think the real benefits of AI as it relates to cybersecurity are more on the TBD front.
mm,
But I mean, what it absolutely has done is increase the attack surface, and that is in terms of just vulnerabilities as a function
mm,
of AI. And so that's absolutely something we're seeing every day in the wild in terms of securing people's AIs or
mm.
LLMs or chatbots or whatever they're doing, and so on and so forth.
Okay, okay, lovely. Uh, uh, um, I mean, I have to say this that it almost feels like we are watching a kind of real-time arms race, like where attackers and the defenders are constantly one-upping each other. So, thank you so much for sharing this. That's really, really important. And so, one of the reasons that you founded Dark Horse Security was because you saw that traditional cybersecurity is um, often too expensive or maybe too complicated for the smaller organizations. So, if you can say like why this accessibility gap is such a huge risk today.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it from the perspective of,
Mm,
um, I mean, say for instance, you don't even have like a door on your house, right? I mean, that's so
yeah.
that's kind of like just so we're clear, right? Like maybe you got like a
Mm,
piece of cardboard, right? And so, why would it be bad to have a piece of cardboard as your door? Well, everything can get in. Um,
yeah.
so there's not really any, you're not stress testing it for vulnerabilities or different ways that you could be attacked, and so. I mean, why is it
Mm,
such a risk? I mean, it's again, it's the same way that
mm,
um, you know, again, just leaving yourself exposed is a risk in and of itself. And so the some of the big reasons, right? Smaller organizations, particularly, haven't
mm,
historically done that much from a security perspective, is because it's generally expensive, right?
mm,
It's going to cost you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to, really have an effective security program, and so most organizations kind of it's a later kind of thing, but what we're trying to do is make it an earlier type of thing. So that's why if you make it easier to use, then you don't. It's not as, and there's, and you see this in all areas
mm,
of the world or business in general, right? Where um, things are more complicated than they need to be, and I'm sure some examples pop to
mm,
mind immediately for you, where specifically in a consulting world,
mm,
where you're billing hours and you're
mm.
doing that sort of stuff. Your whole business is predicated on
Yeah.
maximizing the amount of, they're not incentivized to be efficient because
Mm,
efficient means fewer hours and you get to bill less. So they're
true.
incentivized to be inefficient. And they're incentivized to take longer and make things bigger and make them scarier and looking, and not scarier from a vulnerability perspective, but you just make it
Mm,
look so complex that people are less likely to try to do things on their own, right?
mm,
So again, you see this all over the place, where there's just this, that if in tech, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but like tech loves to talk about first principles, right?
mm,
Like go down to the level of physics and tell me why this is impossible. Um, and fundamentally, why, from a physics perspective, is it
mm,
impossible to have simple, effective, and affordable security? It's not.
mm,
There's nothing. It's not violating the second law of thermodynamics or something like that, right? It
mm.
it just isn't. And so that's what we're doing.
Lovely. It's amazing. And and do you think that AI tools could eventually help level the playing fields for SMBs, or um, I mean, will they widen the gap even further?
I think they're absolutely going to make it. They're going to make things more accessible without question. As we, if only as a function of it's easier to build things, right? So if it's
Mm,
easier for me to build a, we'll call it scanning application or some sort of tooling
mm,
for SMBs, well,
right.
I can build that, I can vibe code that up in a weekend,
Mm,
and then start handing it out to SMBs at a fraction of the
mm,
cost that it would cost a larger organization to do it. Now, I'm not saying it'll be anywhere near as effective because of like the R&D and all that other stuff,
mm,
but um so is security on average going to be more accessible to security organizations? Absolutely. And I mean, Dark Horse is going to be part of that. Now it's worth calling out, just so you're aware, right? From there's almost always been free content for SMBs. For instance,
mm,
there's the Zap web application scanner. There's a number of different. There's OpenVOS. There's been a lot of stuff for a long period of time in terms of helping
mm.
organizations secure their business, and that's something that we're just kind of building on, and is AI gonna, help move that forward faster? Probably.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think it'll absolutely be beneficial to smaller organizations.
Got it. And also, like, there's a growing debate around AI ethics, like, especially as our defensive tools get more autonomous. So, how do we make sure that we are not building security systems that create unintended consequences?
In what way?
You can say, like, I mean, in general, if I mean, you can say, like,
S- Sorry, I'm not sure I completely understood. Sorry, can you?
okay, so, like, regarding the AI ethics, right? So, as defensive tools, so how do we make sure that we are not uh, uh, making the security systems that create the kind of unintended consequences? Or maybe you can say, do you believe that we need stronger regulation or the better
Uh
handled at the industry level? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird and slippery slope, right? Because like once you introduce regulation, right, especially when it comes to like hacking, right?
Mm,
The great paradox of when we're talking about
mm,
security is that you get you always try to introduce these regulations and things like that, and all that serves to do is like handcuff the good guys. Right now,
mm,
again, I'm not talking about regulation in the sense of, just so we're super clear on this, right? I think there absolutely needs to be regulation on AI in terms of um uh like using copyrighted artifacts,
mm,
like books,
mm,
recordings, stuff like that. It's crazy that
yeah.
like, you could have AI that just like ingests all that and then spits it out, and you don't give any dispensation to the people that created the
Mm,
content, right? That's bonkers. Um and obviously, big AI is fighting against that because it's going to cost them a bunch of money and it's going to like slow down progress. They say, whatever. But, I think that, if you create an AI world, right, where, I'm going down a kind of a road here, but,
mm,
if you create an AI world where, everybody's just creating content with AI,
mm,
and the people that are creating new and novel content aren't getting anything, right? You kind of run into this, and we're already kind of there with LLMs where like, all the content, right?
mm,
After they eat everything in the internet, what do you do then, right? And then
yeah.
the AIs are now generating some stupid amount of content, right? All the people are writing articles and with it, and so it's just AI eating AI, and it just becomes this
Mm,
circle where like, a few iterations down the line, we're not doing anything new, right? And so like people still have to
mm,
create novel content, and if there's no value for people or like dispensation for people to be able to
mm,
create that content, then you potentially run into this situation where it's just the same thing creating the thing that's
mm,
eating the thing that it created to create more things, and it's just like where do we go with
yeah.
this? So, Anyway, so that's again like on just like the regulatory side of it's creative, but again, that's not necessarily what you're getting at when it comes to security. When it
Mm,
comes to security, right? Do we want to regulate what you can and can't do? Uh, I mean, again, any regulation, like it's not like North Korea or Russia are going to follow any regulations, right? So like,
uh,
they're just going to go, they're just going to do it, right? It's so
mm,
like I think you have to be very careful when it comes to security, right?
mm,
You want to be, cautious that you don't create something and obviously you don't plug it into things that you shouldn't plug it into.
yeah.
Um but fundamentally yeah, you if you try to constrain innovation on the security side of the house, it's not like there's certain levels, right? Like, so, like, when you're developing weaponry, um, obviously you don't build like gas
Mm,
weapons or, chemical weapons or, you know, stuff of that nature. There are some
mhm,
limitations there, but other than that, you generally have a pretty unbridled sort of view in terms of what the defense industry can
mm,
create, and that allows you to stay innovative and stay competitive. If you created, sort of regulations around what sort of weapons you can create, you're gonna end up, holding spears while they're carrying cannons. Um, so I don't know. It's complicated. Short answer.
mm. No, definitely. I agree. Completely agree with this. Yeah. And like for our listeners, whether they are the entrepreneurs or the small business owners, or maybe just curious individuals, uh, what are the 2 to 3 simple, actionable steps they can take today to significantly improve their cybersecurity posture?
And we're talking about individuals, not businesses, right?
The small businesses also, I mean, we can include as well. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you two separate lists to make it
Uh-huh.
easy. So for people, right? Say you're just like a person.
Mm,
Couple of things that you can do very to exponentially reduce the risk of you getting hacked. Um, One, use multi-factor authentication. Like if you've got multi-factor on your account's probably not getting compromised. Like that's just
mm,
pretty hard to unless like they have like some sort of vulnerability where that can be bypassed.
mm,
And also,
mm,
don't if somebody texts you asking for your MFA code, don't give it to them. Uh,
mm,
Two, use a password manager. So if you're putting passwords, if you're using the same password over and over, uh,
mm,
that will be found, right? Somebody's going to get breached. Somebody's going to find that password, and then they're going to use that
mm,
password in all the places where that password was used previously, and you will get hacked. The third thing that I'd recommend doing is
mm.
just, and again, this is super straightforward. Um, you know, be suspicious.
Okay.
Don't click on random links. Uh,
Mhm,
Adopt sort of a I'm not going to zero trust is an overplayed term right now, but like adopt a
mm.
zero trust perspective, right? Like be skeptical. So if somebody, like
Got it.
we just had someone pose as a police officer and gun down some lawmakers in Minnesota. And so be skeptical, even if somebody shows up at your door dressed as a police officer, be
Mhm,
skeptical. Somebody sends you an email claiming to be somebody, somebody sends you a text message claiming to be somebody or something, be skeptical.
mhm,
Um, and then a fourth one, just for bonus, keep all your systems up to date, right? There's vulnerabilities discovered all the time. You want to make sure that your system is patched, whether that's your laptop, it's your browser, it's any piece of software you're using, your iPhone, your Android, whatever it is, keep it up to date. So those are what you would do from a user perspective. From a organizational perspective, um, I think the biggest things you want to do is you want to have training, right? And kind of the same you want to train your people to do exactly those four things that I just talked about, right?
mhm,
Make sure that your people are having MFA, make sure they're suspicious, make sure they can identify phishing, they know how to react, right? Because
mhm,
50% or higher, I think, breaches start at the human layer. So if you've got people that aren't going to get hacked, you've already just
Mm,
lopped off like 50% of your attack surface. So that's a huge thing. Um, so first, you start with your humans, start with your training. Two, you need to identify vulnerabilities in your attack surface. So there's two aspects to that. You need to understand your attack surface. So that means some sort of asset management inventory and something to that effect. Understand what you've got out there, where your exposure is. There's no
mm,
shortage of stories of people who get hacked by having, some server that an intern stood up, 5 years ago or something like that, and it's just been sitting on the internet collecting vulnerabilities.
mhm,
So um, don't don't do that. Make sure you know what your exposure is, what's connected to your network, what's in the cloud, what's on prem, whatever, wherever, and then assess those systems for vulnerabilities. Right. So if you do those things as well as keeping your systems up to date and sort of that basic hygiene, I think you're gonna again remove a lot of that risk. You're going to have people that aren't going to get hacked. You're going to, or are more resilient or less likely to get hacked. You could also, if you want like something that has a bunch of sub
mhm,
items, you can implement something like the NIST cybersecurity framework, which has a series of recommendations around, what your organization should be doing from a security perspective to make sure that you're
mm.
less likely to get hacked or more resilient in the case that you do get hacked. And it's not all that complicated. It looks big, but it's not
Sure.
it's not all that hard to implement. So those are some recommendations, both at the user level or the individual level, as well at the organization level.
Amazing. Amazing. Great. So, Grant, thank you so much for taking us the deep into the conversation that honestly every single person listening needs to be having right now. AI is not just changing the cybersecurity; it's redefining like who's vulnerable, who's protected, and who's prepared.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So for everyone, whether you are running a business or simply managing your personal data, understand that the landscape is shifting fast. The best protection starts with awareness, and small actions you take today could definitely prevent the big headaches tomorrow. So, if you want to learn more about more and then follow Grant and his team at Dark Horse Security. And they are on a mission to make protections available to everyone, not just the biggest players. So, Grant, what will be the best medium to connect with you?
LinkedIn's probably like the easiest way. So my name's Grant McCracken on LinkedIn. There's another Grant McCracken. He's an anthropologist that's bald, and he's slightly more popular than me, and he's sold books. But someday I will overtake him. But otherwise, you can just find me on LinkedIn. Name's Grant McCracken, Dark Horse Security. You can also email me directly at grant@darkhorse.sh.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay fortified. So, this is your host, Avik, signing off from AIBiz. Till then, be happy. Thank you so much.